Welcome to the Silver and Black Show, and this week's overview brought to you by Hawaiian Airlines. Jim and I get you ready for a matchup against the Houston Texans. We look back at the life and career of Raiders legend Willie Brown. And head coach Jon Gruden joins Chris Townsend to break down some film. All that and more on the Silver and Black Show, starting right now.
I'd like to say we're very sad about losing one of the great Raiders and great people that I've met, Willie Brown, and our heart is really torn up, man. This is one great guy, great player. One of the reasons I came back to coach was to be with Willie Brown. So our condolences go to his family and all the Raider players that played with him and knew him. I'm sure they share in our grief.
Willie was always funny, always laughing, had a great sense of humor, and was a true Raider. You know, and he loved this place, I'll tell you that. You know, I think anyone who knows him knows how much the silver and black meant to him and how much he didn't like the Broncos. So, I'm gonna miss Willie, pray for his family, for peace through this situation, but we're for sure gonna miss him.
The Raiders mourn the loss of Hall of Famer, legend, and friend Willie Brown. Welcome to the Silver and Black Show. As always, I'm your host, Nicole Zaloumis, alongside our two-time Super Bowl champion, Jim Plunkett. Jim, it was difficult news to receive on Tuesday that Willie Brown had passed away because he means so much to this organization. Obviously, he was a great friend of Al Davis, Mark Davis, and a good friend of yours.
He certainly was, and it's a shame, and we're going to obviously mourn his loss for some time, but he was a great friend. Actually, I learned a lot from him when I went up against defensive backs, what to look for, how to do it, where to get the ball to. He was great. My first game I ever played was with New England against the Raiders and against Willie Brown, and the first thing I was ever told about Willie was throw to the other side.
For those that don't know, when people say he represented everything that the Raiders are about, what does that mean to you?
Well, the Raiders are a culture. They do things their own way. They don't listen to a whole lot of people, don't much listen to criticism. Al Davis did things his way, kind of like Frank Sinatra, and that's the way it was. He didn't care what they thought of him, who criticized him, including the league. He went against them many times over his career, and Willie was a big part of that.
Well, in an interesting note, if you look at 2011, the week that Al Davis passed away, it was when the Raiders were preparing to play the Texans.
Correct.
And of course, the Raiders this week are preparing to play the Texans. The Texans, looking at their last game, you could tell that their secondary was inept. We make a trade with them for a third-round draft pick, sending Gary and Conley there. What does this trade mean for the Raiders? I know that they wanted to go younger with their secondary.
Well, I think Conley was having a few problems, a few issues in his coverage. He's still a young man, and that happens. And sometimes he goes to another situation, and it winds up being better for him. And hopefully this trade will also put some of the younger guys in the fire right away, and they're going to have to learn on the go. And that's one of the things you have to do in the National Football League. And I'm sure they drafted these players and traded for them to help them be a better football team. They just have to step up sooner.
Let's go to the other side of the ball when it comes to the Raiders offense. Do you feel like the game against Green Bay, that final score was a bit misleading?
Oh, of course. A couple of turnovers near the goal line, one going in for a score, and it winds up being fumbled through the end zone, so it's automatically the other team's ball. And then on the 1 foot line couldn't get in, and that's a shame in both parts. And then towards the end of the game, even though at that point the game was out of reach, interception going in to score. So all those things hurt the Raiders. But statistics aside, which were pretty even for the entire game, you got to get in the end zone. You got to find a way. You can't make mistakes when it counts.
All right, so what can we expect moving forward? What is this offense going to look like? Because I know there are a lot of expectations for Waller, for Jacobs.
Sure, I think they're going to continue in the same vein they have been. As you mentioned, yardage-wise, they did extremely well. Getting in the end zone, not so well. Jacobs is having a great year. Waller absolutely is phenomenal. And Derek had a terrific game himself. And those are things that hopefully they're going to work on and improve on. But the game plan is probably going to be very similar. They move the ball, and there's no reason why they can't do it again. But now they got to find a way to get in the end zone.
All right, thanks, Jim.
Sure.
Coming up here, Jon Gruden joins Chris Townsend as we continue to remember our friend, Willie Brown.
Brown used to tell at the end of every practice to, signify that practice was about to be over. He would say, "Charles, you know what the man said to the monkey after he cut his tail off?" And I used to go along with it every time because it was so funny to me. I say, "What, Brown? It won't be long now." But yeah, man, that was Brown, man. Me and him used to always go back and forth about who was the real 24. Well, make no mistake, Brown. You were the real 24 and the original 24. We love you. We gonna miss you.
Well, Coach, this week we're going to honor one of the great Raiders and truly one of the great football players of all time, a guy that was on your staff and meant so much to us here in the building. He was such a nice man, the great Willie Brown.
Yeah, I mean, he's the original number 24, and big reason I came back to coach, honestly, was to work with Willie Brown again. But his presence is certainly going to be missed around here, and our condolences go to his family. We're going to miss him, but what a great player and great human being he was.
A big corner, 6'1".
Big. I mean, he was about 230 pounds. And if you go back, if you talk to George Atkinson, the original Soul Patrol back there, they were called. They had Skip Thomas. I mean, he was a very physical press corner. They had a guy named Jack Tatum. They had this cat named Willie Brown and, of course, George Atkinson. You did not want to be a receiver going up against Willie Brown in a Soul Patrol.
Far different than what we got going today with the rules. These guys were able just to beat you up.
Yeah, there were not a lot of rules. You could play bump, physical contact, up and down the field, 60 minutes a game. But this was a great years for the Raiders. I mean, they had a great defense. They had the pass rush. They had the linebacking core. They had the best secondary. And we all know they had the offensive firepower to put you away as well. But Willie Brown led the Raiders on and off the field. His energy level, his passion to compete, prepare, and will it out of his teammates was really second to none. And if you knew Willie Brown, you'd agree with me.
The length that he had, the long arms, that's what, all these great old films that you see him with the interceptions, his ability to just go up and get it.
Well, he had great ball production, great ball skills. And, when Charles Woodson was drafted here in 1998, when I was in my first year, we gave Woodson number 24 for a good reason. We wanted him to be the next great Raider to wear those numbers. And we drafted John Abram this year, a guy that I think represents the kind of guy and football player Willie Brown was. And I expect Abram to live up to it as well. But Willie Brown, I hope young players, young people around do a little research on this man and try to be just like him, because he was so special.
And this is the one play, NFL Films. It's the great call by Bill King, "Old Man Willie."
Yeah.
It's one of the great calls of all time, Super Bowl history.
Yeah, and I was very fortunate to have him as my secondary coach for 4 years when I was here. And he did a great job, like I said, on the grass as a great Hall of Fame player. And he did a great job for the Raiders, helping develop young people. And all the best to his family. We're going to miss you.
Look at that. What a shot right there, 2 Hall of Famers. It just shows the great history of this organization when you look back. And as you said, a man that was always there to try and help young players as they were coming through this system. And what he meant to Al Davis and the Raiders.
No doubt. And, you got to remember Flores and Al Davis and Mark Davis. All these guys had so much success. They had such great continuity. I mean, these players played together for a long period of time. Willie, I think, played here 11 years, 10 years. And his impact is still felt around here. And
I love the sweaters.
Yeah, I did too.
We got to get you back in a look like that, Coach.
Yeah, no, I can't fit in those sweaters. But we're going to try to go to Houston, and we're going to try to win one for Willie Brown. And easier said than done, but our players have a lot of respect for him, and certainly want to try to get a win for old number 24.
What kind of coach was he?
He was a great coach. He was a technician. He was a guy that really understood the principles behind bump and run coverage. And if you're Charles Woodson or Eric Allen or any great corner, why wouldn't you want to listen to Willie Brown? He was committed to challenging the receiver every play. He was committed to the technique every single play, and he was committed to challenging himself every single play. And he didn't win every battle, but he won most of them. but he had a great down-to-down presence, and Lester Hayes and Mike Haynes and all the ones that came after Willie, I think, tried to emulate a lot of the techniques that he played with.
And I think about my time here in the building, just how kind he was. And he was always walking around, and you're like, this guy's one of the greatest football players of all time, and just the nicest man.
He was. And there's David Shaw right there, the head coach at Stanford, right here on the bottom right. And you look around, there's Willie Brown and Fred Biletnikoff right up there in the back. How cool was it to call my dad? I say, hey, Dad, guess who my secondary coach is? Willie Brown. You know, my receiver coach, Fred Biletnikoff. Yeah. But, you know, just having the keys to the history behind the great Raider teams on your staff was a great resource for me, and one that I'll continue to use as I move on forward coaching.
Well, we honored Al one time in Houston, and now we're going to honor Willie Brown in Houston, two of the great Raiders of all time.
That's awesome. There they are, two of the great 24s. And I bet if you brought Charles Woodson in and asked him, I bet he would tell you he drew a lot from the great Willie Brown.
What's it going to mean to finish up this long road trip, just to finally get done with it?
I'm going to become a travel agent. I think it's the most ridiculous schedule in the history of the world, honestly, how you can play on the road 5 straight weeks, including a game in London, and against playoff caliber teams every week. It's been tough. It's been a grind, but it's bonded our team. We've come together. We've had to spend a lot of time together on airplanes and on bus trips in London. So we've gelled a little bit as a team, but it'll be good to play in front of our own fans for a change.
Get a win in Houston, and then we got a few home games. Let's go get this one, Coach.
You got it, Tony. Thanks, man.
Welcome back to the Silver and Black Show. We continue to look at the life and career of Hall of Famer Willie Brown, a man who embodied what it meant to be a Raider. His dedication to this organization was unparalleled, and not a day will go by that his impact won't be felt.
Among the football giants whose names have been cemented in Raiders lore, only one had equal parts Louisiana charm and lethal on-field tenacity. His name was Willie Brown.
Looks and throws, left side, picked off, put into the left.
Selected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in his first year of eligibility, Brown overcame the challenge of entering the league as an undrafted free agent to become one of the greatest and most influential players in the history of the game.
Willie was the best at what he did. He was the best cover guy in the league.
I played against him my first 7 years in the league, and I was always told when Willie was on the field to throw to the other side. Coaches thought a great deal of him.
After beginning his career with the Oilers and Broncos of the American Football League, Brown was traded to the Raiders in 1967, a move facilitated by Al Davis that would keep Willie in silver and black for more than 50 years.
It's one of those amazing deals. You say, well, why would they let him go?
Largely regarded as the godfather of bump and run coverage, Brown's illustrious playing career with the Raiders is highlighted by 39 interceptions,
A 50-yard interception returned by Willie Brown.
5 AFL All-Star games, 4 NFL Pro Bowls, and a Super Bowl title. At age 36, Old Man Willie landed a starring role in perhaps one of the most striking highlights ever captured by NFL films, when he intercepted Minnesota Vikings quarterback Fran Tarkington's pass and returned it for a 75-yard touchdown in Super Bowl XI.
Intercepted by the Oakland Raiders. Willie Brown at the 30, 40, 50. He's going all the way. Old Man Willie. Touchdown Raiders.
The play that would remain a Super Bowl record for nearly 30 years helped render number 24 as one of the most iconic and coveted Raider jersey numbers of all time.
The old 2-4 hat. This the real 2-4. The real 2-4 right there. That's the other. Yeah, baby, back again.
Make no mistake, Brown. You were the real 24 and the original 24.
With his Southern brand of charisma,
Thanks, Will.
Willie Brown was as fun-loving as he was remarkably skilled at cornerback.
Before I announce the pick, let me just say congratulations and to all the moms, happy Mother's Day to all of you moms throughout the world.
His immeasurable contributions to the Raiders organization extended beyond the field. From the sidelines as a two-time Super Bowl winning assistant coach and member of the football operations staff.
He's a great coach. You know, he was a technician. He was a guy that really understood the principles behind bump and run coverage. And if you're Charles Woodson or Eric Allen or any great corner, why wouldn't you want to listen to Willie Brown?
To the community.
The Oakland Raiders participate in a lot of community ventures, so it's important that getting involved with things like this.
He fires. It's intercepted by the Raiders.
Brown's prolific career exemplified commitment to excellence unlike any other Raider before or after him. But like all Raiders who have left their mark on one of the most storied franchises in the National Football League, his legacy will endure forever.
You will be sorely missed, Willie. I know I'll miss that big smile and friendly demeanor. Up next, Jim rejoins me at the desk as we look ahead to the matchup against the Houston Texans.
He's a very good player. He's a very hard guy to tackle. He runs hard. Coach Gruden does a great job using him. Very, very good running back. You know, their offensive line is big and physical, and Oakland's, and you know, he gets behind his pads, and he's a big challenge for us.
You know, I think they have a very good offensive line. I think they deserve a lot of credit for the way that their offensive line plays, both in the run game and the pass game. So for us, it's a great challenge as a defensive line. It's 2 weeks in a row we're going to see a great offensive line, and we look forward to those types of challenges.
Welcome back to the Silver and Black Show. A big matchup here week 8 as the Raiders conclude their road trip in Houston against a Texans team coming off of a bitter loss. They've actually had 3 losses this season, decided by 6 points or fewer. But when you look at the wild card, Raiders and Texans, this is going to be a dogfight, Jim.
It is. They're right in the thick of things. You know, the Raiders 3-3, Houston is 4-3, and it's a good opportunity for the Raiders really to get back on that winning track. They played well against Green Bay, but not well enough. Too many mistakes. They moved the ball very well, but it wasn't enough. They just couldn't get in the end zone. And Texans are a pretty good football team. I've seen them play. They're very solid defensively, and with Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins, offensively, they're very good.
What do you expect to see from them offensively? Are you expecting to see more of the run game or an aerial attack in this matchup?
Well, going into the game, the Raiders have rushed for almost twice as many yards as the Texans. And, when you try to correct what's going on offensively, you always fall back on that run game. But their passing game, they're very good. Deshaun Watson gets out of trouble a lot like Aaron Rodgers, has big play guys, and 5 of their receivers are averaging 10 yards or more per catch. And that's huge. And, you've got to slow that down. You got to put pressure on Deshaun. And offensively, do what we're doing, run the ball, be effective on the ground, look for your opportunities in the air, but cut out the mistakes.
What do you expect to see when it comes to their offensive line? Because I know that they've been giving Deshaun a lot of time, and he's hoping that they can create some holes for their run game.
Oh, sure, and that's what they're going to try to do, because after that close loss to Indy, which we were able to beat, they're going to look at that film and see what they can take advantage of. But I think it's still a passing game for them. Deshaun Watson not only having a great year, but he gets out of trouble a lot like Aaron Rodgers. He finds somebody down the field, or he can take off and run. He's their second leading rusher for Houston, and so he does a lot of things, creates a lot of problems for the Raider defense, but hopefully they'll make some adjustments and go after him.
You mentioned DeAndre Hopkins. This is going to be a big test for the young secondary that the Raiders have right now.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. They're putting in some young guys. Connolly's no longer with the Raiders. They're bringing in some younger players to play on the defense side of the football. But, I still think it comes down to the pass rush. Put pressure on the quarterback. He has a lot less time to find his receivers. Sometimes he panics. DeAndre has great ability to run with the football, but you also have to be able to contain it. But I still say pressure is the key.
Well, speaking of pressure, what do you expect from their defensive line when it comes to our quarterback, what he's going to be facing?
Well, they're very good defensively. They haven't given up a whole lot of yards passing the football because of that pass rush. But Derek Carr is coming off a very good game. A few mistakes, unfortunately, for him. But otherwise, the Raiders are moving the football offensively. I don't think they need to change anything. They're running the ball really well. And Derek is finding those receivers down the football field a little bit more than he has early in the season.
Well, it would be nice to finish this road trip with a win. And make sure you join us next week as the Raiders are finally home to take on the Lions. On behalf of Jim Plunkett, Chris Townsend, Jon Gruden, and all of us here at Silver and Black Productions, I'm Nicole Zaloumis. Go Raiders!
Come apart at the seams as Willie Brown intercepts and runs 50 yards for a touchdown. Throws intercepted by the Oakland Raiders.